Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. She didn't say it like it was a joke. Clarabelle dabbed the corner of her lips with a napkin, locked eyes with her brother across the table, and said right as I passed her the salt, "Without me, he'd have nothing." I didn't even react. At first, I thought I misheard her. Maybe she meant it differently. Maybe he was someone else. Maybe there was context. But no, she meant me, her husband, Everett, the man she married. Because in her words, once, "You make me feel grounded." Apparently, now I'm just dead weight with a mortgage and a driver's license. The room fell into this uncomfortable hush where only the clinking of forks against porcelain filled the space. Her mother pretended not to hear it. Her father gave a little grunt that might have been approval. Her cousin giggled. And Clarabelle, she just kept chewing. I looked down at my plate. 3 bites of her mother's dry lasagna, 2 slices of store-bought bread, and a whole lot of disappointment. I swallowed the bite I'd been chewing for too long and said, "Then let's try." She blinked. "What?" I looked her in the eyes, calm as ever. "Let's test that theory. Let's see what I've got without you." She froze. Now, Clarabelle isn't someone who gets surprised. She's a planner, a controller. She once emailed a florist 4 times to confirm the roses would be soft blush instead of bruised coral. But in that moment, her mouth opened just a little, her napkin still in hand like it was going to protect her from what I just said. I stood up. No yelling, no scene, just slowly, deliberately picked up my coat and keys. Her dad muttered, "Sit down, Everett." I replied, "I've been sitting for years." And I left. I didn't go far, just drove around, parked behind a shutdown, and stared at the flickering sign of a 24-hour gym across the street. I thought about everything about the years I spent making sure she never saw the bills late. The way I gave up a promotion because it would have taken me out of town too often. The way I ignored the strange names that popped up on her phone with emojis I didn't recognize. I thought about the time she told me my taste in music was embarrassing, and the way she rolled her eyes when I said I liked classic cars. I thought about how many times I'd apologized for being too sensitive when really I was just reacting to her slowly grinding down my self-worth one sarcastic comment at a time. But I also thought about the safe. Clarabelle had a drawer she never let me open. She said it was for feminine stuff, but I knew the sound of that drawer opening in the middle of the night. I knew the hurried shuffling, and I knew how she always shut her laptop the second I walked into the room. So I went back, not to talk, to check. She wasn't home yet, still putting on a show for the family, probably spinning some story about me being dramatic. I went to that drawer, opened it. Inside, receipts, a prepaid phone, hotel bookings under her maiden name, and photos, selfies taken in places I've never been with her, with someone else holding the camera. One shot showed her in a robe, the same one she wore on our anniversary. Another was in a cabin, not ours. My name wasn't on anything, but his name it was. And it was someone I knew. By the time Clarabelle walked in, I had already printed everything. I sat at the kitchen counter, the papers spread out like some twisted collage. The second she saw them, her heels clicked to a stop. The silence between us felt like it had weight, thick, impossible to ignore. She stared at the evidence, then at me like she was debating which one was more of a threat. "You went through my things?" she asked, like I'd been the one hiding another life in a drawer full of paper trails and betrayal. I didn't answer her. I just pushed a photo forward. The one where she was in a robe with a man's arm barely out of frame resting behind her on the headboard. "Is this Denton?" I asked. Her lip twitched. I saw it. A tiny crack in her carefully built mask. Denton was her coworker, a guy I met once at a work mixer. The same guy who told me my wife was too sharp for just one man at the time. I laughed it off. Now that sentence felt like a breadcrumb I'd missed. Clarabelle didn't deny it. She just shrugged. That shrug hit me harder than if she'd screamed. "You were boring, Everett," she said, grabbing a bottle of sparkling water like we were mid-debate and not standing on the ruins of our marriage. You never took charge of anything. You just existed. Denton actually makes me feel something. I wish I could say I stayed calm, but something inside me cracked. Not with rage, not even with heartbreak, just a deep, hollow ache. I said, "So, the plan was what? To drain our joint account and disappear into the mountains with him?" She looked away, which was all the answer I needed. And then she smirked, and said, "You wouldn't survive a week without me. I've carried this relationship for years." That's when I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was ridiculous. She really believed that, truly thought I was helpless without her. Maybe she even needed me to believe it too, to keep her little narrative alive. So I told her the truth. I told her I already froze our accounts the minute I saw the second booking. I had called the bank, explained the situation, and transferred my share into an account she didn't know existed. She blinked, caught off guard for the second time that day. I wasn't supposed to be capable of that. Apparently, I was supposed to sulk, beg, plead, maybe storm off and cry in my truck like some pitiful sitcom husband, but I didn't. Not this time. "I told you at dinner," I said. "Let's try. Let's see what I have without you." She took a step back. Her confidence started to wilt. "You're being impulsive," she said. "You're not thinking clearly, but I was." For the first time in years, I was thinking without her voice in my head. I looked around the kitchen, the same kitchen I'd painted, where I fixed the cabinets she slammed, where I patched the wall after she threw a plate at it during an argument I had apologized for. And I realized this wasn't my home anymore. It was just the set of a story she'd been directing for too long. I packed a bag that night, just essentials, left the rest. She stood by the door, arms crossed, still expecting me to beg. I didn't. I said, "Good luck with Denton." And I left. But as it turns out, Clarabelle wasn't the only one keeping secrets. And Denton, he wasn't just another man. He was something else entirely. And what I discovered next that nearly broke me. I didn't go far that night. Just 2 towns over to a motel that smelled like stale coffee and old carpet. But at least it was quiet. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Clarabelle's words. That damn smirk and the way she shrugged off our life like it was an old coat she didn't want anymore. But the worst part wasn't her betrayal. It was that deep down voice whispering, "Maybe she's right. Maybe you are nothing without her." I couldn't let that voice win. The next morning I went to work like nothing happened. I own a small renovation business, mostly kitchens and flooring. Clarabelle never paid attention to it. Thought it was cute that I used tools for a living. She liked telling people I fixed things like I was a glorified handyman. But that business paid for our house, our car, and ironically, her spa days and designer handbags. I never needed to flaunt it, but now I was glad I kept it all in my name. By noon, I was on autopilot. Demolition, measurements, talking with clients, pretending everything was fine. But in the back of my mind, I kept thinking about that drawer. Something hadn't sat right. It wasn't just the photos. It was the way she hid them. Like, she wasn't just cheating, she was planning something. So when I got off work, I didn't go back to the motel. I drove back to the house, parked down the block, and waited. Her car wasn't there. Good. I let myself in, went straight to the drawer, and pulled everything out. I found what I'd missed the first time. A small black notebook tucked behind a stack of old bills. I opened it and felt my chest tighten. It wasn't a journal. It was a ledger. Dates, times, locations, and names. Not just Denton for other men. All listed with initials, meeting spots, even coded notes. G Hotel, lunch, expensive, good tipper. Our bar didn't stay overnight. It read like a business plan, except the business was her and the product was betrayal. I sat there staring at it, my hands shaking. I flipped through the pages and at the end, I found something worse than names. It was a plan written in bullet points. Drain joint account. Transfer funds to private ACCT. Done. Move Everett to lease name only in progress. Use Dinan's lawyer for post-split papers. Push divorce after bonus hits. February. Keep house. He won't fight if I'm calm. She wasn't just leaving me. She was gutting me piece by piece, like I was nothing more than a minor obstacle between her and her new life. This wasn't emotional. It was strategic, cold, and apparently Denton was just one of many. A convenient pawn with a good jawline and a job title she could brag about. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I took photos of every single page. I uploaded them to cloud storage. And then I did something I wasn't proud of. I logged into our home security system. Clarabelle never changed the password. She thought I was too simple to bother checking, but I'd installed the system myself. I knew there were cameras, not in private rooms, but one facing the front hallway and living room. I scanned the last 2 weeks, and there it was. Night after night, Clarabelle opening the door, greeting different men like it was normal, kissing them, walking them toward the hallway, sometimes laughing as she waved at the camera like she knew I'd never look. But one clip stood out. It was from 5 nights ago. Denton, he wasn't alone. Clarabelle opened the door and greeted him. And then another man stepped inside, older, bald, wearing a suit. I didn't recognize him, but he handed her something, an envelope, and she nodded. Denton kissed her cheek. The second man didn't even speak. They left together, all 3 of them. That envelope, I had no idea what was in it, but whatever it wasn't good. Something told me this wasn't just about cheating anymore. There was a bigger game being played, and I'd been the blindfolded fool sitting at the center of it. And that's when I realized Clarabelle wasn't just betraying me. She was using me, and I had no idea how deep it went. I stared at the paused security footage, trying to make sense of it. Dent and I expected smug, handsome, and exactly Clarabelle's type once she got bored of playing the supportive wife. But the man in the suit, he didn't smile. He didn't even make eye contact with the camera. He handed her that envelope like it was a transaction. No handshake, no warmth, just business. The kind that people like me weren't supposed to understand. And then all 3 of them disappeared down the hallway. I couldn't stop wondering, who was he? A lawyer? A fixer? Something about him screamed quiet danger. The kind that doesn't need to raise its voice to ruin your life. I zoomed in on the footage, paused on a frame where the corner of the envelope was visible. There was a seal on it, not a stamp, a company logo, small, circular, faint. I didn't recognize it, but I snapped a picture on my phone. I had a gut feeling this had nothing to do with cheating anymore. I left the house before Clarabelle returned. I couldn't face her yet. I needed answers, not more of her gaslighting and smug half-smiles. I drove to the one person who might help, my old friend Micah, a tech consultant who once helped me install the security system Clarabelle never bothered to learn how to use. Micah was a conspiracy nut, lived off energy drinks and online forums, but he was brilliant. I showed him the footage and the photo of the seal. He narrowed his eyes, leaned in, and whispered, "You're into something heavy, man. That's not just some firm. That's a private arbitration company. High-end, discreet, used by people with something to hide, like affairs," I asked. "No," he said, shaking his head. "Like money laundering, asset transfers, pre-IVOR shielding. People use these services when they want to legally screw someone before they even know what's happening." I felt like the floor dropped beneath me. Clarabelle wasn't just cheating. She was preparing to annihilate me financially and emotionally while keeping her own hands clean. Micah started digging. Within an hour, he traced the seal to a company registered under 5 shell names, all connected to a trust in Delaware. One of the trustees, Gideon Denton. That's when the second wave hit me. Denton wasn't just Clarabelle's lover. He was her accomplice, possibly the architect behind everything. The fake tenderness, the vacations, the slow siphoning of funds. He'd probably seen guys like me at H 100 times. The quiet husbands, The men who apologize too much, the ones who doubt themselves just enough to stay manageable. But he made a mistake. He underestimated just how dangerous a man like me can become when he's been quiet for too long. I didn't go back to the motel that night. I drove out to my office, locked the door, and sat at my desk with every printed document, every screenshot, every note I had. I laid it all out like puzzle pieces and stared at the edges. Somewhere in this web was the way out. Not just escape, justice. By morning, I had a plan, and Clarabelle had no idea what was coming. By the time the sun came up, I had more clarity than I'd felt in years. I wasn't going to scream, throw things, or play the heartbroken husband in some tragic melodrama. Clarabelle wanted to gut me clean and silent. Fine, I'd learn from the best, and I'd hit back where it would hurt most. Her image, her network, and the future. She was so busy trying to steal from me. The first thing I did was meet with my accountant, Martin, an old friend who owed me more than a few favors. I explained everything minus the drama and showed him the screenshots and the ledger pages. His face tightened as he flipped through them. "She's not just hiding assets," he muttered. "She's redirecting them through corporate shielding. Someone's helping her and they're good." I asked if there was a way to get ahead of her to freeze what hadn't already been drained. He nodded slowly. "You'll need to move fast. Preemptive filings, emergency motions, and you're going to have to make this public before she does. If she controls the narrative, you'll look like the guilty one." I hated that idea. I'm not the type to air dirty laundry. But if keeping quiet meant losing everything, my house, my business, even my reputation, then that silence would become a weapon in her hands. And I was done handing her weapons. I went home that afternoon to gather more documents. Clarabelle wasn't there. Her car was gone, probably parked outside some boutique cafe with dinner somewhere nearby, planning the next step in my eraser. I walked through our home like I was seeing it for the first time. Not with love, but like a stranger evaluating the damage. Every framed photo of us suddenly looked staged. Every drawer felt like it held secrets. I found a hidden phone in her nightstand, tucked behind an old perfume box. No password, just arrogance. I opened it. There were messages between her and Denton, not just flirtations, plans, updates, timelines. February 12th. Execute the move. Everett won't suspect a thing. Make sure the papers are served after the account clears, and one that made my hands go cold. If he pushes back, my contact can shut down his permits. He won't build anything without our approval. They were trying to dismantle my entire business, not just steal from me, bury me. I copied every message. I emailed myself every image. I recorded a video of myself reading the texts out loud with the timestamp showing. I wanted everything documented. If she was building a legal coffin for me, I was about to light the whole thing on fire before she had the chance to slam it shut. I left that phone exactly where I found it. That night, I contacted a journalist. Not a flashy TV anchor, but someone who worked deep in local investigative reporting. The kind that had taken down 2 city councilmen for shady land deals the year before. I told him I had a story. Marital betrayal, financial fraud, manipulation, corruption. He asked for proof. I sent a portion, just enough to get his attention. He called me back within 15 minutes. "This goes deeper than you think," he said. "Denton's name has come up before. Property laundering, shell companies, political donations under ghost identities. You've got a storm brewing, Everett." I asked what that meant for me. He said, "It means if you want justice, you'd better be ready to become the face of it." I wasn't sure I was, but I was sure of one thing. I wasn't going to be Clarabelle's cautionary tale. I wasn't going to fade into the background while she sipped champagne with her polished little con artist in ski lodges bought with my sweat. They started this war, and I was going to end it with the whole world watching. 2 days later, Clarabelle invited me to dinner. It came through a casually cold text as if we hadn't exchanged loaded glares, silence, and evidence folders in the last week. "Let's be adults," she wrote. "We need to discuss everything calmly. I've made a reservation. 7:00 p.m. dress appropriately. The arrogance practically oozed through the screen like she was still running the show, but I didn't decline. I agreed. Not because I was ready to forgive or because I wanted closure. No, I was ready to corner her. And this time, I wasn't coming as the man she married. I was coming as the man she underestimated. Before heading out, I called the journalist again. I'm meeting her tonight. I said, it's public and she won't expect anything. Be nearby. I'll signal if things go sideways. He agreed, and I slid a small voice recorder into my jacket pocket just in case. I wasn't taking chances anymore. The restaurant was the kind of place Clarabelle adored. All low lighting, sleek menus, and servers that acted like they were auditioning for Broadway. She wore a navy dress I hadn't seen in months. Her makeup was perfect. She looked like she was on the cover of a magazine titled Victory. You look well, she said as I sat. No apology, no emotion, just business. I matched her tone. I've had time to think. She gave me a practice smile. Good, because dragging this out helps no one. We can make this clean. I didn't respond right away. I let her talk, and she did rehearsed lines about mutual respect, mature endings, and how she wanted to ensure I had something to land on once everything was settled. You'll be fine, Everett, she said. You just need structure. That's when I leaned forward. You mean the kind of structure Denon was planning to dismantle behind my back? I asked. Her face didn't change, not much. A flicker of tension in her jaw, a shift in her hand placement. Let's not ruin this with accusations, she replied smoothly. I reached into my coat and placed a single photo on the table. Not from the affair, from the notebook, her handwriting, the bullet list. Push divorce after bonus hits. Move Everett to lease name only. She stared at it like it was nothing. You went through my things. I smiled, and you went through my life like it was a checklist. Let's not pretend we're even remotely on the same moral footing. Clarabelle stayed quiet for a moment, then took a slow sip of her wine. You're reacting emotionally. You'll look foolish if you keep this up. I've kept everything professional. I'm not the one with a second phone, I said calmly. Or messages arranging illegal asset transfers through shell companies or recordings of financial advisors delivering envelopes to our house while Denton plays bodyguard. Her hand tightened around her wine glass. You think you're safe? I said quietly. You think people like Don stay loyal, but he's already under investigation. That journalist I spoke to, he's linked Don to 3 open cases. Your name might not be in ink yet, but it's in pencil, and they're sharpening the eraser. Clarabelle's mouth finally opened, but no words came out. I stood up. You invited me here to finish the story you wrote, but I'm rewriting the ending now. I left her sitting there at her favorite table in her favorite dress, staring at a version of me she didn't recognize anymore. The journalist called me before I even got back to my car. She panicked, he said. One of my guys saw her make 3 calls from the restaurant parking lot. She's scrambling. Good. Let her scramble because I wasn't finished, not by a long shot. The morning after the dinner, I expected retaliation. Clarabelle had always been predictable in one way. She never liked losing control. I figured she'd blow up my phone, send one of those manipulative texts trying to twist the narrative back in her favor, maybe even swing by my office pretending we could talk things through. But she didn't. Not a word, no messages, no calls. It was worse than any outburst. It meant she was plotting. So I stayed ahead of her. I met with a legal team that afternoon. Not some budget lawyer out of a strip mall, but a small, fiercely private firm that handled reputational damage, asset defense, and high-profile marital disputes. They were discreet, ruthless, and exactly what I needed. When I laid everything out, the fake business connections, the notebook, the video clips, the burner phone, one of the partners actually whistled under his breath. This isn't a divorce case. He said, this is a take-own. Your wife's trying to financially execute you before she even files. The next few hours were a whirlwind. Emergency filings, asset protection paperwork, cease and desist letters sent to Dinan's companies. The firm launched a quiet inquiry into every transaction Clarabelle had made in the past 6 months. By the time I walked out, they'd already frozen 2 accounts she thought I didn't know about. That night I got a text, not from Clarabelle, from her sister Lydia. She and I were never close, but she wasn't cruel like the rest of Clarabelle's family. Her message was blunt. "She's freaking out. What did you do?" I didn't reply. Instead, I sat at my desk, looking at the documents I gathered and thinking back to the early years of our marriage. I used to believe Clarabelle's coldness was just how she protected herself. That the sharp jokes, the sideways glances, the controlling nature, it was just fear or maybe a learned behavior from growing up in a family where affection was currency. I kept excusing it, kept convincing myself I was the lucky one. But now all I could think about were the moments she made me feel like I was a burden. The way she once told me I lacked presence when I didn't speak up at a party. How she joked about my builder's tan in front of her friends, laughed about my budget wardrobe while I paid for her designer shoes. She didn't love me. She never did. She loved owning me, and I let her until now. The next morning, the journalist reached out again. "We've got enough," he said. "But there's something you need to see." He sent a folder. Inside were financial reports from Den's companies. Buried in those numbers was a recurring transfer labeled only as consulting services. Same amount, same date, every month. The recipient, a company under Clarabelle's name. She wasn't just trying to ruin me. She was benefiting from Denton's schemes actively, willingly. On paper, I stared at that file, heart racing. This wasn't just betrayal. This was criminal. Before I could even process it, another message came through from Clarabelle. Just one line. "We need to talk now." I didn't answer because I knew exactly what that meant. She'd finally realized the walls were closing in. And for once, she wasn't the one holding the hammer. When Clarabelle finally showed up, she didn't come storming in like I expected. No threats, no tears, just calm, rehearsed poise. The same expression she wore at parties when she was trying to impress people who didn't matter. She walked into my office like she still belonged there. I didn't offer her a seat. She stood for a long moment, studying me, waiting for something. Maybe regret, maybe a crack in my composure. But I didn't give her the satisfaction. I'd rehearsed this moment in my mind 100 times. I was done flinching. "I know what you've been doing," she said finally. "And I think you're making a very big mistake." I almost laughed. "Clarabelle, you tried to erase me like I was an old calendar event. The mistake was thinking I'd stay quiet while you lit the match." She sighed and placed a folder on my desk. "Settlement terms," she said. "If we both agree, it all goes away quietly. No court, no mess." I didn't open it. Instead, I reached into my drawer and handed her a much thicker folder compiled by my legal team, backed by every piece of evidence, every financial detail, and every witness statement the journalist had helped gather. "Here's the truth," I said. "Signed, time-stamped, and going public in 48 hours. Unless you agree to my terms." Her lips parted, but no words came out. I laid it out for her clearly and calmly. She'd walk away with nothing from the business. She'd return every cent she funneled into Denton's hands. She'd issue a statement of fault, not for me, not even for the media, but for the investigation that was already underway. And in exchange, I wouldn't press charges. I wouldn't publish the story, and I wouldn't ensure her name became synonymous with fraud in every corner of the internet. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. For the first time, she looked small. "I thought you were weak," she whispered. "I was," I said, "but not anymore," she signed. And just like that, it was over. I walked her to the door. She didn't say goodbye, just stepped out into the daylight like a woman who lost everything because she had. Not because I destroyed her, but because she destroyed herself trying to destroy me. Weeks passed. The journalist ran the story, stripped of names, focused on the financial fraud. Denton's company came under full investigation. The arbitration group dissolved within days. And me, I took a vacation, my first one in years. Alone, quiet, peaceful, no secrets in drawers, no fake smiles across dinner tables. I rebuilt not just my business, but myself brick by brick. And here I am now sharing this with you. Not out of bitterness, but as proof. Proof that the quiet ones, the boring ones, the ones who keep their heads down while others try to step over them. We are not weak. We are patient. And patience, when it finally moves, is unstoppable. Thank you for watching Reddit Confessions. If you've ever seen someone underestimate the wrong person or live through it yourself, tell us in the comments. And here's something fun. Share the most shocking historical betrayal you know of. We love a good plot twist from history. See you in the next